All right. Welcome back, everybody. I'm teacher Nathan from Rights at Work. This afternoon, we'll be looking at the O-Level 2014 paper, especially paper 2. Our focus for today would be on the visual stimulus as well as the narrative text. Okay, so we'll be looking at the tips and tricks needed to answer the question well. Okay, so the main focus will not be on the answer itself, but rather the skills needed that will help you ace your O-Level Paper 2 exams. Okay, let's take a look at visual stimulus first, and we'll be interested to look at the questions first, okay, so that we are more objective when it comes to looking at the text. Okay. I already checked. Okay, so looking at the questions here, this visual stimulus you could see is slightly more challenging. Okay, so the first one is the first question it asks you on the idea that the photograph is trying to establish. Okay, so when you see the word photograph, you need to ask yourself, what does the photograph show? What is shown in photograph? Number 2 is how to link back to question. Okay, it's always a two-step procedure when it comes to such questions. So now you see the question asks what idea, which means that when you link back the question, you need to infer from the photograph what you see and how it is related. Okay. Next question, why was Jane Goodale's discovery that chimpanzees use tools so important? So again, why here tells me that a reason needs to be given. Okay, and you can see the focus is on how chimpanzees use tools, so the animals can use tools to help them with their daily tasks. Now, looking at question 3, we are looking at how the Jane Goodale Institute encourages people to support animal welfare, and we are looking at how the logo, the icons, so it's like your emojis in your WhatsApp like that, how the icons are linked to different messages. Okay, and the messages are here: animal welfare, natural environment, and human communities. So it's how your icons link to these three tenets or aspects of the institute. Okay, and lastly, you can see there's the word suggest, which means that there is some kind of inference that needs to be made from the roots and shoots program. Okay, so now you need to ask yourself, what is this roots and shoots like? How is it linked? Okay, so I just give you a simple analogy. So this is a plant. Okay, pardon the very rudimentary drawing that I have here. So this is your ground. So here is underground, and here is above the ground. Okay. So what is a shoot? The shoot is this thing here. So we are referring to this young plant, and this is the leaves. Okay, these two are the leaves. And the root is the bottom part here. So now what they are looking at is how the root and the shoot, how are they linked to young people? So you need to draw this connection. Okay, so I'll just give you some time to look at some annotations that I made for these questions before we move on. If you need me to zoom in on certain parts or elaborate further, do sound out, alright? Alright, if there are no further questions, then we will move on. Okay, so first thing is when we look back at our text, there are a few things that we need to take note. Here, in this text here. Okay, so the first thing we observe is this title, Jane Goodale Institute. So you can see that the information is related to this organization or company. Okay, ORGN means organization. Okay, so we are looking at how this whole text here is related to the Jane Goodale Institute Singapore. Okay, next we look at this picture, the caption, right, the description of the photo. Okay, of picture here, say is Jane Goodale in Africa. So we are looking at this lady, and she's, you can see here, is the human is reaching out to the animal. Okay, and we will actually find out later in the subsequent parts that this animal is the chimpanzee. And we also observe in this photograph, we have these words that are written here. Every individual matters, every individual has a role to play, and every individual makes a difference. So you can see that the emphasis is on every individual. So you are trying to highlight how everybody plays a part. So everyone plays a part. In this case, it will be wildlife conservation. Okay, and you can see all these plants. These are all related to nature, right? Because they are leaves. And you can see also we are going to look at this later in our question. This is the icons. So this lady here likely represents Jane Goodale. Then your chimpanzee. Then you have this. This is also related to nature. maybe the environment. Then this is the human hand. Okay, so this is the first part. Now we can go on further. You can see here, this is one of the main headers. So headers actually are used to categorize information. So you can see one is on who is Jane Goodale. Then this is the what. They tell you what this institution is doing, this organization is doing. Then it also looks at another program. So this is another main point here. I would say it's not the main point, but it's a secondary point. Right? We talk about the root and shoots program. Now, if we look further at the first part here, the header, Jane Goodale, we observe here that she discovered that chimpanzees use tools. And why is this so important? You can see the work changed the mankind's perception of primates, consequently our attitude towards all other animals. So this is a cause. Jane Goodale found that the animals use the tools, and the effect is here. Okay, our impression changed. Alright, now we can see, if you look down further, you look at how Jane Goodale Institute, it talks about how what they do. Alright, so you can see that they have 3 tenets here: animal welfare, natural environment, human communities. I'll just indicate 1, 2, and 3. And what do they do in these 3 areas? Help educate and support Singaporeans in these aspects. So you can see education here serves as like kind of foundation. This foundation for knowledge. Alright. Then if you look further, these 3 aspects would later be linked to your icons above here. Okay, so I just highlight in blue here: animal welfare, natural environment, and human communities with this thing here. Okay, so later then we'll see what's the link. Okay, lastly, now we get this roots and shoots thing. Alright, so you can see they talk about how it's a youth program and how they can, this is the aim, build partnerships and make a difference. The main purpose of the program. So why the program was set up. Now you can see, if you go on further, you can see here where Jane Goodale talks about how they can make a difference. They can break through and make the world a better place. Okay, so I'll say this thing here is not the main piece of information. It's just something that they add, just a quote. But I think if you read between the lines and observe the language, it will be useful and important for our last question later. Okay. Okay, so now let's take a look at the questions. Okay, we are looking at question 1 first. So what idea is the photograph trying to establish? So you can see the photograph shows Jane Goodale reaching out to the animal. So this is what we will describe. This is the description of the photograph. Okay, let me just highlight in green first so we'll remember this. Now, so the next part is how this links back to what we are looking at. So in this case here, you can see that there are some words here, and probably these words have something to do with the picture. Okay, so if we look closely, it talks about how everyone needs to play a part in doing this, reaching out to the animals. Okay, So here is the explanation. The link to picture. And therefore, you can see when everyone plays a part, that's why they need this Jane Goodale Institution to create that kind of foundation for wildlife so they can harness that potential where everybody plays the part for the better and greater cause. Okay, so back to our question. What's the photograph trying to establish? So I'll say the photograph shows Jane Goodale reaching out towards a young chimpanzee. This highlights how every individual has a part to play in reaching out to animals and helping them. Okay, what did I write here? In you can say in in advocating for wildlife conservation actually. Or you can say in reaching out to animals. Alright, so you can see the first part here is what the photo shows. And after I've established this, I go on further to say how every individual has a part to play. And what they do in advocating for wildlife conservation or to reach out the animals. Then you usually will have this word here, highlights, or you want to say emphasize. There must always be this word to show the importance of the photograph. Alright? So these are my 2 steps. Step 1 here is to describe picture. And step 2 is to link message back to picture. Okay? Alright, now looking at the next question where they ask you why Jane Goodale's discovery of chimpanzee using tools is very important. So you can see over here, the chimpanzee use tools and how is it important? Change mankind's perception of primates and our attitude of other animals. Okay, so that will be our answer. So how I write it? It was because Jane Goodale's discovery caused mankind to rethink their view of primates and consequently other animals too. Okay, so I think the thing that a lot of people would miss out is this. That it's just about how the human beings just look at the chimpanzees with a different view. But no, it's also this idea that not only chimpanzees but other animals. So this is a twofold thing, twofold effect. Okay, because there are 2 different effects that we need to consider and highlight. Alright, moving on. Let's take a look at question 3. We are looking at how here animal welfare natural environment and human communities are linked to your different icons. Okay, so back to our stimulus, we have the 4 icons here, right? And how animal welfare, natural environment, human communities. So animal welfare should be quite straightforward, right? Animal welfare is likely referring to this one, right? Animal welfare, chimpanzee icon. Now, next one is on natural environment. Natural environment also very straightforward. This leaf. Now, then when we talk about human communities, that's where the tricky part comes. Because there's a hand. Hand, yes. Then what about this girl? This human face icon. Is this referring to Jane Goodale, or in this case the human community? What do you guys think? Okay. I think when I first looked at this paper, actually I thought the girl's face is referring to Jane Goodale herself, and therefore it's not included in the answer. But unfortunately, this lady's silhouette here is also part of human community. Okay, I'll just think of it as, since both are different parts of the human body, right? The head of the human body and the hand. Then of course, then we can assume that both are for human body. They are part of the human. All right, but just that being said, I'll say this question is also a bit subjective and a bit ambiguous, right? Because there are only 3 different tenets, but now there are 4 different icons, and we are expected to pick the icons, and there are no instructions to say that all 4 needs to be in our answer. Okay, so I think for this question here, we'll just we'll just take it at that face value, but we don't have to be too hard about it. All right. So very simple. Animal welfare, we are looking at the chimpanzee icon. Natural environment is the leaf icon. And the human community is the human face. And human hand icons. Okay. Okay, now let's take a look at question 4 now. So we are looking at how the name suggests about the young people. So you see there are two marking criteria, 2 marking points, right? So very likely the root will be 1. You explain the root, they'll give you 1 mark. You explain the shoot, you'll get the 2nd mark. Okay. So now I think the first thing that we need to ask ourselves is roots. Roots, when you have that kind of what's the function of the roots? Okay, some of you here take science, right? Is to anchor the plant into the ground. So this anchoring of the plant in symbolic terms, it can actually refer to the foundation. All right. So in this case here, go back to our text. When we talk about the roots here, actually is here the education and supporting. So we are trying to create that kind of foundation where young people understand how to treat the animals. Okay. Now then, next thing is shoot. You can see the shoots, right, is referring to a young plant. It's very new, it's just grown out of the seed, and therefore we are not looking at so much of the age, but rather the implication that the young plant can give. Yeah, and in this case, it will be the potential to do great things. Okay. As such, we will say here, this is where the potential is. The program will offer the opportunity to build partnership. They're able to make friends with other shoots right here, and they can break through and make a world a better place. Okay, so we are trying to highlight that the young ones are the ones that can advocate change, or they have the potential to advocate change through building partnerships. Okay, so this question here is a bit more challenging. It not only requires you to think of the meaning of the word, but also link it back to the text. All right. So first thing, we talk about the root. Huh? So we'll say just like the roots of a tree, roots of a plant. The program provides a foundation for young people to understand how to treat animals in the future. Okay, so the main word here, the key word is foundation. And that's about the roots. Okay, now we talk about the shoots. Like how the shoot is a young plant with a lot of room for growth. The young people in the program have the potential to, okay, we're going to copy directly from what he stated in the text. The potential to make a difference through building partnerships. Okay, so the keyword here is the word potential, because it means that you are young and you can do, you have the capability and the capacity to do a lot of things. All right, so I'll just leave this here for a bit for everyone to take in the information first before we move on. Okay, if you have any questions, do sound out. If you'd like me to zoom in, do type in the comment section too. Alright, if there are no further questions, let's move on to our second text, which is the narrative text. Okay, so what will happen is as follows. Okay, I would like to look at the questions first. Right, so looking at our questions, first one, they ask you at the beginning, they tell you that two men are trapped on a mountain, and we need to ask ourselves how the language used emphasizes the lack of visibility on the mountain. So what's this word visibility? It refers to the state of being able to see. Alright. And we need 3 details from the paragraph. Okay, it's a very common question for this one. Okay, moving to question 6, they ask you 2 reasons. Okay, 2 reasons why writer and his friends found it hard to ensure the cliff face extended below them. Right. So when you have answer in your own words, this means that you need to rephrase your adjective and verbs, your action words and your description words, your descriptive words. All right. Question 7. The writer says that something he had read in the wilderness survival manual begins snapping away at the edge of my decision. So the word here is snapping away. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that you're trying to say something in an angry manner. Okay? And they ask you what is suggested. So when you have this kind of thing, what is suggested? What is the effect? They are asking you for inference. Okay, so you need to look at the language and the text and come up with a reason for certain things. Okay? Now, for question 8, they say, what to that effect? So now you're going to have this idea to that effect. We are actually referring to how the words with the same general meaning. Okay? Now, when we talk about words to that effect, that means that when we use such language, we are actually telling the reader that actually currently he is unable to replicate the effect. So maybe the effect has got to do with being very intensely passionate, angry, happy. The emotions must be very intense. Alright? Okay, let me just indicate here. Intense emotion. So as the writer is talking to you now, probably he's not feeling that way. So it's very difficult for him to talk about certain emotions. Alright? Now let's take a look at question 9. They say in the morning the sun rose on the face of the cliff. The rock glowed in pastel pinks and rose petal reds. So we are looking at the color of the sun. And the draw is almost 50 meters. So you can see this is a very classic O-level question. Right? They ask you for the contrast. So when you have contrast, you need to have 2 opposing ideas. That means you need to share with the examiner what are the 2 opposing ideas. So in this case here, usually we look at the sentence length. As you can see from here, the second sentence is very short, just 6 words. While the first sentence is more than twice as long as the second sentence. And now when you have this kind of thing, you always be effect. Then over here you need to infer. why do you think the author wrote this way? So is there something that he wants you to feel, or something that he wants you to think about? All right. Now looking at question 10, they ask you why the two men, when they light the fire, why did they fail? So when you have the word why, we're just looking at a reason. So you just need to explain the reason will do. Then say, now apart from the initial decision to stay, what are two other decisions that the two men made? So over here, this is a pure listing question. We're just writing down the two other decisions, that's all. Okay, part B, where they ask you how the rescuers fight. So this refers to a method. So is it by helicopter and they saw maybe the fire or the help sign? These kind of things. Then moving on, question 12 here. So they ask you, there are two stories in the passage and each feature a survival manual. So what is the effect? So we are looking at that kind of consequence here. Okay. So for example, did the manual save the people, or was it useless, etc.? And subsequently, we have our global question. This is standard. Now we are looking at the main focus of each stage of the story. Okay, so the main thing is, when you ask you for the main focus, you need to, after you read a paragraph, you need to ask ourselves, so what's the main point? Okay, so when you constantly ask yourself for the main point and evaluate on it, think about it, that's where you are able to align that kind of that one or two line sentence summary with one of these phrases here, and that's where you'll be on the right track. All right. Okay, without further ado, let me run through the text with you. Okay. All right, we are not here for a reading session, so I'm not going to read word for word with you throughout the whole text, but I'll just point out certain important things that we need to take note. All right. So the text starts with how two young climbers are stuck on a high ledge, and they look at how the fog suddenly occurred. So your fog here is like your haze in Singapore. So it's like the visibility is very low, you cannot see anything, and therefore you cannot continue your activity. So if you observe, they describe the fog in very interesting language. The first one is here, thick as candy floss. So we are looking at the fog, the intensity is so thick. Next, we look at how they muffle the fading sun. Okay, so first one, when you talk about thick, we are looking at something that is very heavy or very dense. All right. Next, when you muffle something, this word, it means that you make something less strong or clear. Okay, the strong here is not referring to like strength, but rather the effect of a light. If the lighting is very strong, that means very intense. Okay, the next one we observe is the world purpled down into absolute blackness. So this purple, right, we're looking at that kind of dark reddish blue color. It's a dark color, which means that the sun is blocked and it's going to set already. So it means that your visibility will fall very, very significantly. Now, if you observe, you can see that it was 15 hours of below freezing temperatures, and they'll be very dark, right? But they decided to stay where they are. Okay, can you see decided? So they made a decision here. And this was the first of things they did, right? So you can see this is decision one that has been made. Now, Moving on to paragraph 2, they talk about how I often felt it enough myself. So you can see that the author is trying to change the story. So instead of talking about Deering and Angus, now the author is trying to talk about himself and his own experiences. Right? You can see he talks about how he climbed to the Andes Mountain and he experienced the same thing. Right? Now the interesting point is in paragraph 3. Now you can see they were at the top of the sheer cliff face. Cliff here refers to some very steep, or it could be a near vertical, uh, uh, near vertical corner, okay, of the mountain. And you can see that he wasn't sure about how high they are because of all the vegetation, and also because of the gloom that was pulling at the base of the cliff. Okay, so when we look at these two, we are looking at how he's unable to, the visibility again is low. And we look at the word gloom here. Gloom here refers to darkness. Okay, so something is very dark, cannot see. Okay, and you see they say it seems like a very sensible idea. So sensible here means based on good judgment. Okay, and you can see that initially the author wanted to carry on with this activity when suddenly the survival manual came snapping away at the edge of my decision. So as I talked about earlier, snapping away means suddenly something started talking angrily to the author. Okay, and the basically the book cautioned the author not to reduce, not to climb down something of a certain height if you are unsure of what is at the bottom of your drop zone, right? Now you can see a smart hiker, I told my component, never jumps into the whirling darkness of terrible depths, or words to that effect. So you can see probably you are looking at how the author's words to that effect actually suggest that the author's speech could be more exaggerated. Why would I say that it's more exaggerated? Because previously, in the previous sentence, it talks about how they talk about how the writer suddenly felt stupid, if not suicidal. So the author has a sudden realization. So he realized like, oh no, something is wrong, something is going to happen. That's why he suddenly he said this speech, and probably it was more exaggerated. It was very, very emotional when he said that, right? Because he knew that such an action could not take place, or else they would be screwed. Okay, then next, you can see then they continue staying huddled in the weak fire, and we look down. The drop was 50 meters. The author only has 24 meters of rope. Here. That means if they have tried to go down, once they reach the 24-meter, they are going to fall off the cliff because they don't have any more rope to ensure their safety. Okay, then where is the yeah, this is the one. We stood there, the previous sentence. You can see the sun rose here. This is the one. In the morning, the sun rose, and they describe how beautiful the scenery. So you can talk about how it's a beautiful scenery here. Okay, and you can see the next sentence was very short. This is the contrast of how they were in a very dangerous situation. Yeah, okay. Contrast between a short and long sentence. Right, and next one, we go back to the Deering and Angus story. Okay, now you can talk about how they want to ward off hypothermia. So they try to set a fire, but you can see the leaves were soaked through, which means that the twigs were thoroughly wet. So wet that they cannot use. And you can see they made a smart move. This is their second decision. And they further elaborated that they settled back and consulted the manual. So it's this one. Okay, and it was now 8 p.m. and the rescue helicopters trying to find the two missing men. Now you can see they were both getting annoyed. So they made their third smart decision that night. Decision 3. And the decision is here, they elaborated. They ripped off the pages as fuel. So that means what did they do? They did not follow the manual. Because the manual told them to use the leaves and the twigs, right? But because all the leaves and twigs are wet, so that's why they decided to do this. They choose not to follow the manual, and you can see their decision saved their lives. Okay, so let's go back to our questions. So the first question asks you about the three details, right? So as we have discussed earlier, okay, let me write down the three details for you. The first one is thick as candy floss. The second one that we have talked about is muffled the fading sun. And the last one we observe is world purpled down. Into absolute darkness. Okay, so the first one, thick as candy floss, it suggests the fog is extremely dense, thus reducing visibility significantly. Okay, so the main thing you need to talk about is dense. Okay, because this is to describe the word thick. Now, muffled the fading sun, it suggests that light emitted from the settling sun was blocked by fog. Okay, so this implying visibility was low. Okay, so the idea of muffled has to be talk about how the light was blocked by the fog. Lastly, when the word purpled down, it suggests the environment faded into a total absence of light. Therefore, it impairs one's visibility. Okay, so the idea is for purpled down, we talk about how it slowly faded into a total absence. Okay, so the color is slowly getting more and more intense until it becomes totally pitch black. All right. Okay, I hope everyone is hearing me so far. Okay, now it's better. Okay, now let's take a look at question 6 now. When they ask you for two reasons why they are hard to be sure that they can't ascertain the height of the cliff. Okay, so let's go back to the text in line 15 and 16. Now you can see it was hard to be sure. And why is it? Because of the vegetation and gloom. So firstly, we'll just talk about how there were too many trees and plants which blocked their views. And second, it was too dark. So we'll say there were too many trees and plants that block their view. And secondly, it was too dark to see how far the cliff extended. Okay. Now looking at question 7, where the writer said that something that he had read begins snapping away. Okay, so what is this decision? The first question. The second one is, what is suggested by snapping away? So you need to infer. Okay, then we will go on to question 8 to we'll do the two questions together. Okay, the next one is words to the effect. So what does the style of language suggest that he used in the preceding sentence? So you need to look at what's this preceding sentence first. Okay, so quite line 20 now. Okay, so you can see the decision and my decision. So the decision is a sensible idea, which just to rappel down on the road. So rappel means that you have this cliff here, you have the anchor point, and you slowly rappel all the way until you reach the bottom of the cliff, like that. Okay, so what the author is saying is he wants to do this, but the actual fact is the rope is only until here, 24 meters. So the remaining, if you do the math, is 26 meters. He's going to fall down to his death. Okay, so that's what the text is talking about. The decision was to rappel down. Okay, here. Now, the next one, when they talk about how, what is suggested by snapping on the edge, right? So you can see, when you talk about snapping on the edge of my decision here, it means that suddenly he has something that the author remembered, right? You see, the survival smart hiker never jumps ever. So you're looking at how he's bothered by that decision and how it may not be the right choice. Next, when you look at line 28, where they talk about the words to that effect. Now you can see the previous sentence, which was what the author was very passionate or very, when he talks about it, he talks about it in a very exaggerated way here. This one, a smart hiker never jumps. So we are looking at how the words were being said in a very exaggerated manner. Alright? Alright, so let's write the answers down. So the decision was to rappel down the cliff. Okay? And what is suggested? So it suggests the writer was bothered by his decision as he realized it might not be the right choice. Okay. Now, looking at question 8 now. So what's the effect? So what's the style of language? You would say that he exaggerated his words to achieve that dramatic effect. Okay. Okay, let's move on further. Question 9 now. So we are looking at how he creates that contrast. Okay, so the contrast here is the sentence length. All right. And also you can the it's not only the length but also the tone. So you will say in the first sentence, the writer talks about, or you can say the writer describes the beautiful morning scenery. In a long sentence. And this is contrasted to the short sentence that presents the fact of a dangerous situation. Okay, and what is this effect? The effect is actually to the effect. Okay, let me just write it down. The effect of this contrast is to highlight the precarious or dangerous situation the author was in. And this is notwithstanding the beautiful scenery. Okay, so the main thing when you talk about effect is always to highlight, to emphasize, to point out to the main point. Alright? Okay. Okay, let's take a look at question 8 now. So they ask you why the first attempt at lighting the fire failed. So looking back at our text, we look at how over here, right, what they needed was a fire, but some twigs on the ledge, but they were soaked through. So we are looking at how the twigs were very wet. Okay, so that will be our answer. So why? It was because the twigs were thoroughly wet. And not combustible. That means it cannot be set on fire. Alright. Now we also look at how the two other decisions that both Deering and Angus made and the effect. Okay, so looking at our text again, I've already pointed out the few. So you can see the first decision is here. They decided to stay where they were, and that was the first thing that they did right. Decision 1. Next, we look at how over here, they made their second smart move. they settled back and consulted the manual when it came to the setting of the fire to attract the rescuers. Okay. Now, lastly, you can see the third decision is stated here. The third smart decision, they started ripping out the pages to use as fuel. That means they tore out the pages, the manual to start the fire. Okay, so those are so we need to write about the second and third decision. Second decision would be they spent time. They decided to check the survival manual on the steps to start a fire. And the third decision was they decided to tear out the pages of the survival manual to use as fuel for the fire. Alright. Now, moving back to our text again, we need to find out how the rescuers found the climbers. Right, so you can see that the rescue helicopters were clattering helplessly, so the rescuers could not find them. However, they lit the fire and the rescuers could spot them. Their lives depend on the fire, so we need to infer from here. Okay. So how the rescuers? The fire allowed the rescuers to find them. Rescue okay. Okay, last but not least, we are looking at the writer's story and the story of Deering and Angus. So you could see here, okay, the Deering and Angus story, they started ripping out the pages, which suggests they did not follow the manual. Okay, next, and because they did not follow the manual, they were safe. The two were safe. Okay, then we look at the text for the writer. You observe that the writer followed the manual. Okay, a smart hiker never jumps to the willing darkness. And what happened when they did that? We all stood there thinking how close we had come to disaster. Which means the writer did not rappel down to his death. Okay, so that will be the consequence of following or not following the manual. So the writer followed the manual, but the two brothers or the two men here did not follow the manual. Okay, so when they followed the manual, the writer did not rappel down the cliff, therefore escaping death. While the climbers, when they followed the manual advice, what happened? They were unable to start a fire. Yeah, alright. Okay, last but not least, let's take a look at this global question. So in the first paragraph, you can see that okay, I have my text here with me. So you can just refer here. Oops, what's happening? Okay. Now we can see in the second paragraph, we are looking at how the writer himself is also unsure of what to do sometimes. And he don't know when the risk is too much to bear. So the answer that we'll use is not knowing when to stop. Okay. Then for paragraph 4 here, right? The writer told themselves that maybe they should stop. A uh, wise a smart hiker never jumps to the willing darkness. Okay, so as such, you can see this is what we can consider a wise advice. Okay, and lastly, for paragraph 6, we look at how they tried to follow what the manual talks about, which was to what do you call that? Use the twigs to start the fire, right? They're trying to put theory into practice. But eventually, all of us know that they failed. Okay, and lastly, what did they do? They decided to tear out the pages of the survival manual. So we'll call this a different approach. All right. Yeah, I'll just leave this here on the screen for a bit for everybody to take in the information. All right. Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I'm teacher Nathan from Writers at Work. And if you have friends who are in primary 5, do encourage them to join me. Okay, primary 5 or primary 6, do encourage them to join me later at 2:30 p.m. We'll be looking at some primary 5 and 6 prelim papers. For our secondary school friends, do catch me on Thursday and Friday. We'll also be looking at more O-level papers. All right, I'll see you guys around. Bye-bye.